Lift every voice and sing. 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 Lift every voice and sing.
Welcome to the CAAAS Conversations. I'm your host, Reiland Rabaka, Director of the Center for African and African American Studies, which we call the CAAAS here at the University of Colorado Boulder. Today we are joined by Audrea Fryar and Isaiah Chavous, two of the illustrious alumni of the Center for African and African American Studies, and they were instrumental in the establishment of the center. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you,
Rabaka.
thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's get going. Tell us a little bit about your background and the Black student experience at CU Boulder. We can start with you, Audrea.
Alrighty. Well, hello, everyone. My name's Audrea. I am a recent CU Boulder graduate. It's weird, as we got out of there quick. It definitely goes by really fast. I was born and raised in Aurora, Colorado. I came to CU in 2017, where I was met with a lot of culture shock. I can tell you that. I was raised in a pretty diverse community, and that was a privilege I learned very soon once I got to CU, and had this very, very isolating feeling of being, one of the only Black women in my dorm and my classes. And I was lucky enough to be brought in and took under the wing of my rugby team, which really helped bring me a sense of community. So I would say that my Black experience at CU had its ups and its downs. It was isolating at times, but I also was able to find a community and folks like y'all and Ruth and Korea and Rabaka who mentored me and really got me through.
Beautiful. Thank you for that. Isaiah.
Yes, hello, I'm Isaiah. Not born in Colorado, but raised in Colorado Springs. Went to Boulder same year Audrea did, which was 2017, and just graduated last May 2021. Boulder's an interesting place for not only Black students, but just any other student of color on that campus. I think freshman year was really eye-opening for me. I was in Hallett Hall, which at the time was considered the multicultural dorm. And so a lot of Black students were actually in my dorm on the first floor. And so that opened my eyes a little bit. And I think my experience and intro to what the campus makeup really was might have been skewed at the beginning. I think something that's super interesting to me about how that kind of built the framework going forward for the next few years was realizing all of the valid and really complex issues that were facing Black students on the Boulder campus. So moving through, I believe, end of my junior year, I joined student government, where I think my first position, I was doing PR for legislative council. That was like my first position. And then moved into running for one of the tri-executive student body president positions, where I ended that term upon graduation this last year. So it's been a good run.
Excellent. I mean, this feels right into the second question. Both of you were active, very active in CU student government. So the question is, what position did you hold in student government? And what are some of the major accomplishments during your tenure in office?
Yeah, I'll start off. So I went into student government. It was my junior year, my second semester, and I applied to the non-traditional student liaison position, which was brand new, did not have really any framework on what that position was going to be, what it meant. And I ended up working mostly with undocumented students. And I did a lot of research and advocacy around undocumented students, awareness spreading around undocumented ally trainings. And then shortly after that, this semester ended, and then I applied to be the director of diversity and inclusion. And that's what I did my last year. That's what got me involved with the cause. I think my greatest accomplishments from that position was probably the Multicultural Advisory Commission. And that was a commission where a bunch of diverse student organizations came together and talked about, conversations around race, equity, and diversity on the CU Boulder campus, with the goal of creating more advocacy and institutional change through legislation. And then I would say my second accomplishment, I did an anti-racist clothes collection where I sold some apparel and raised some close to $3,000 for the cause and for another organization called Black Voices for Black Justice, which our peers Ruth and Korea are both, or sorry, Ruth and Olivia were both a part of. And my last one is, of course, the cause. So yeah.
Wow, that's really incredible. Thank you so much for your contribution to the cause, not simply monetarily, but again, we say time, talent, and treasure. So thank you so much for those contributions. Isaiah, President Chavous.
Yes. Sorry, I jumped the gun on that last question there, but
No, hey, man, this is a conversation. We just kick your shoes off and relax,
there we
brother.
go. Yes. But yeah, as I stated earlier, my initial intro to student government was doing PR for legislative council. About, I want to say like 3 weeks into that position, I decided to run for student body president and was campaigning most of the time up until, I believe, April, when they announced the winners, and our ticket did win. That was probably the most life-changing year from that point to graduation of my life, to be honest. And I think student government is often considered kind of like a club or a social kind of gathering, as it is most everywhere. And CU is really, really unique in the fact that it's not a club. In fact, it is a union with a large budget. And in hindsight, it's kind of crazy to think 20-year-olds are running, $30 million, but that's the way it works, and that's how you get things done. And so I'd say probably, my top, not in any order, but the first thing that comes to mind of a big accomplishment was working to disassemble the contracts between CCI, which is the Colorado Correctional Institutions, and the University of Colorado, not just Boulder, but CU Denver, UCCS, and the medical campus. And so that was about 100 million plus contract that I fought for alongside a bunch of administrators and the other chancellors of the schools. I don't know if they were necessarily fighting for it, but we were in conversations together. And that ended, and I actually got confirmation about 3 weeks ago that CCI has since, due to the spark of that work, pulled out of the furniture business entirely. And so that was a multi-billion-dollar win in the grand scheme of things. I'd say the next most, I think important thing that happened on that campus was the police oversight board that was established on the Boulder campus. There was one for Boulder Police, but this is CU Boulder Police. Okay. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours trying to get that done alongside, BSA and some other organizations on campus that were forming at the time. And then obviously the cause. The cause, I think, is kind of the trophy that we're carrying on, and that's really a legacy moment that I'm very proud of. And I know Audrea, Ruth, and Korea have put in an extraordinary amount of work to make sure that happened correctly. So.
Wow. Listen, just hearing y'all talk about this and hearing, this whole notion that we're leaving a legacy at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm beaming with pride as y'all's professor and as your comrade in this struggle to create the cause and to get it off the ground. But I want to say that I'm blown away. One of the reasons I wanted to make sure that we have this kind of conversation, because I think it's important for us to be models, part of leaving a legacy is to offering up our lives and our struggles as models to others. And I could not be prouder of y'all. I know y'all heard me say this so many times, but let me just state it publicly and for the record, that way y'all can run tell your mama and them, right? And your grandmama and them, and little, Peanut and Ray and Junebug and all the rest of them and your family. I'm just so incredibly proud that we are creating, and we have been creating, a sense of Black community and Black culture on the Boulder campus, but to have a permanent space for it though. Mm-hmm. So to actually do some Black institution building at a predominantly white institution, that's radical. See, that's next level. Y'all got me full, filled up. Anyway, I feel so good. Check this out. Next question. Did you take any, this is a trick question, Audrea, watch this, Isaiah. Did you take any African-American studies courses during your time at CU? What impact did they have on your undergraduate education?
Yeah.
Trick questions.
So I think my first African-American studies class was with Sean O'Neill. And I believe I was either a sophomore, I think it was my second semester, my sophomore year. Mm-hmm. And then I went on to take the intro to hip hop. I also took Black Lives Matter class. And then I took gender, sexuality, and pop culture with Michelle Simpson. Actually, that was my freshman year, but it wasn't necessarily African American studies focused. And for me, I mean, I just remember being in Sean's class and having this epiphany of like, wow, this is the first time I'm being exposed to Black intellectuals, like W.E. Du Bois. And I'd never read, you know, work of Black intellectuals to the extent that I did in that class. And I realized that what I was missing to be an advocate was the vocabulary that I needed to be able to sit in a room and have conversations about race. And it was always so frustrating because, you know, I would go home after this class and I'd be so riled up, like so riled up. And Isaiah knows, poor guy, I was calling him every day, like, we learned this, and, you know, and I was always so frustrated because, you know, when it came to, you know, conversations about race with friends and family, it was hard. And even peers on the CU Boulder campus, because they just didn't understand how I was feeling. They didn't understand the isolating feeling I was feeling on campus. They didn't understand what it felt like to be a Black woman. And I didn't necessarily have the tools and, again, the vocabulary to express that and express how, you know, racism is still perpetuated in every way on the CU Boulder campus and in the wider society. And so it was a big pivotal moment for my educational career. And I think even my post-grad and really gave me direction and knowing, okay, this is something that I want to fight for the rest of my life. And, you know, in your class, you know, Michelle Alexander, The New Jim Crow, that book specifically was the book that made me realize that I wanted to be a lawyer and that I wanted to create change in the criminal justice system. And I was rereading the exam that we took on that class, on that book, in the Black Lives Matter class. So yeah, I mean, those classes were pivotal and huge for not only my educational career, but for my future.
Isaiah, here I come. Watch this. Audrea Fryar. You taught me so much in that class, though. You were my eyes and ears. You helped me. You let me know if I was really being effective, getting some of these concepts and ideas across to the students. And one of the things I love so much about teaching the Black Lives Matter movement class is that it's not filled with a bunch of academic jargon. It's a class about what's happening in the real world in real time. You all asked me to teach the class. You know, I'm just being responsive to you all. And it's also showing, I thought we were trying to model that what it means to be a critical thinking Black person. You don't have to sort of be academic. You can keep it real. You can still be real. And Audrea, I tried to teach y'all that for me, it's all about sort of synthesizing academic philosophy with folk philosophy. That means, you know, my grandmama and them, how they be putting me on every time I call home. I'm never going to let that go. And so that is African American studies, synthesizing knowledge that we create in the community with knowledge that's being created on the college campus. And you and I both know on a campus like CU Boulder, a lot of times Black knowledge is marginalized, if not erased and rendered invisible. And so Audrea, you know this, Isaiah, you know this, I have felt a great deal of cultural alienation and intellectual isolation. And in fact, I'm often closer with my students. I'm looking at two of my teachers. You know, my students are also my teachers. Y'all want to keep me hip. So if I'm really funky, fly, and fresh, and I bring the funk and bring the noise, it's only because y'all teach me how to do it and keep my stuff where it don't stink. I'm fresh with it. Isaiah, are you ready? Bad boy. Come on, Mr. President.
Yeah, no, that's great. No, unfortunately, in my academic career, I have not been able to take as many classes as Audrea has been able to. In fact, the class you referenced with Sean O'Neill, I was so intrigued by the class, but it did not fit. I actually changed my kind of academic journey, like my sophomore year, to include different classes. But I was like, you know what, I'm going to come. And I missed one of my own classes to sit in on his class unexpectedly and just walked into the lecture and just sat down. And yeah, you know, I think my biggest learning point did not come from class. Unfortunately, I did not get to have you, Dr. Rabaka, as one of my professors, which is just devastating, really, in hindsight. But I did have the opportunity to work with you in practice. Yes. And I think a lot of the learning and really cohesion that I needed to understand my own identity, for one, and to put that into practice with a perspective that I may have never gained otherwise, came from being thrown into the fire in the moment, working on projects that will sustain, at the same time as being guided by my mentors, such as yourself, who actually value and want to cultivate Black intellectuals in this world, regardless of source, regardless of circumstance. And so you've opened my eyes as an individual, and all of the other allies who we've been working with, who are working in the same vein as we've done. That's where really my education came from.
Isaiah, listen, man, I was so proud to just see the way that you were flexing as, student body president, the way that you kept it real, the way that you committed to a kind of multiracialism and multiculturalism, as it should be, at Research One, university, but at the same time, making sure that we could earmark some issues that really, was impacting Black students on this campus. And, the fact that, as you said, you and I have never worked in the classroom. We have only worked together outside of the classroom, and you are my brother and I'm your big
100%.
brother. And I said, we were at meetings together, like arm in arm. Audrea, you was right there with us, Ruth and Korea, and we met with deans and vice chancellors and provosts, and all of, like, people won't know the behind the scenes of how this works. And that too is African American studies. It's not, let me tell you something, Audrea, didn't I say African American studies, it's not an intellectual exercise, right? African American studies is more about us, everybody in this conversation, being bridges from the campus to the community, which is why I'm still keeping up with what y'all are doing after you graduated. That's African American studies. Most people have it twisted, right? Most people, they really don't know what it is. Isaiah, I'm so proud, man, just to be able to get a chance to work with you. Obviously, it made a huge impression on me that, we've never worked together in the classroom, but the kind of rapport, the kind of respect and brotherhood that we were able to build,
Amazing.
I just think it put a lot of people on notice. Isaiah, here's a student body president and a professor. We one time we was on the phone. Was it like 90 minutes, 2 hours, almost 3 hours?
Hours and hours.
I mean, this is after Isaiah. It was after 5 o'clock. Here's the after hours work of being a Black professor on the Boulder campus. It's not just teaching. In African American studies, we say that teaching doesn't simply happen in the classroom. It's some of the extracurricular things. This is one of the reasons I'm so excited and elated to work with our inaugural associate director, John Robinson Miller IV, because we understand that a lot of the teaching will happen in the center during extracurricular activities, which leads me to my fourth question. One of the reasons we fought for the Center for African and African American Studies is because we do not feel a sense of belonging, and we want to build Black community on the Boulder campus. Could you all talk to us a little about what community means to you and how you believe the cause will build community and create a sense of belonging at CU Boulder? Audrea?
Yes. I mean, just to start off, I think you don't really know isolation's like until you're in a lecture with 500 students and you're the only Black person in the room. And that's a feeling, that is to remember, and that, really carries with you. And so for me, the cause was like, I want a space on the CU Boulder campus where Black students can come together and not only survive, but thrive, because I think too often Black students on the CU Boulder campus are surviving. Athletes are working, the students are working, and they're leaving school and going to other jobs, and they're trying to, still also trying to build a community themselves through BSA and other Black student organizations, and organize and be activists and advocate for other Black students. And so I'm hoping, for me, the cause was taking that load off of students, for one, and, having resources put towards other people and a space to build this sense of community, and to come in and to talk and to, have these conversations and be able to talk about, like, man, it was a tough day. Like, I had this microaggression happen. I had this teacher look at me in this conversation about race and expect me to answer, and I didn't feel comfortable. And just like stuff like that happens on a day-to-day. And so for me, the cause is, creating that space where we can come and we can talk about it. And then, we can build a framework and, put something forth to combat those experiences. And I think another big component for the cause that I would love to see come to fruition is peer mentors and educational mentors that look like you and that understand your experience, because it's hard to, you know, talk to some of, you know, your academic mentors and they just don't fully get what it's like to be in your shoes. And there's plenty of great resources on the CU Boulder campus, do not get me wrong, but it's different when somebody can sit there and they can understand you. Lastly, I would say, I think having Black mental health advocates in the cause is going to be big, in sense of, and I'm kind of going to the other question, but just this is what a community is. A community is having these different people who have these different expertise that help build towards, you know, Black student success on the CU Boulder campus. And so that's what I want. And I want, you know, Black students after me who come to CU not to ever have to feel the way that I felt at certain times. So yeah.
You need to stop playing and go ahead and go to law school so you can be the official counsel of the cause. I mean, you need to stop playing where you just, I say, is it me? Just laid it out.
That's what needs to happen. That's what needs to happen.
We're working on
Stop
it.
playing. I got your letter recommendation written. Audrea, stop playing. You teasing us and stuff with all of the, no, seriously. What you just said was so beautiful. It was so heartfelt or whatever. I think that there's a part of me as your mentor, I don't want to re-traumatize you all by having you talk about these experiences. However, this is why I'm saying it's important for us to tape this conversation so we don't have to keep, now it's one thing if we want to talk about it and we, you know, it comes up, but at the same time, even the fact that you all have professors that don't even know what a racial microaggression is. They don't know anything about the extra emotional labor that we have to do. And I've had conversations with both of y'all after hours off the record, right? Where I'd have to say, Audrea, do you remember? So I don't get sued. I would have to say to you, well, I'm not a therapist, but I hear what you're saying. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a mental health specialist, but I've been here for 17 years and I've had some pretty rough and raw experiences on this campus. And I need a healing. We need a healing. And the cause is about us coming together and healing, right? And creating a permanent space where you can be any kind of Black you want to be. And we celebrate that, right? And we grapple with that in real terms. So we not simply deal with Black tragedy, but we also deal with Black triumphs. The fact that you all are graduated, well, hallelujah. I think if it's one thing that I did right, I can look at these little Zoom boxes and say, I did a lot of stuff messed up and wrong. But if it's a couple of things that I've done right, I've helped some students make it through this university. And I have some great pride, professorial and otherwise, pride in y'all, just looking your little round faces. Isaiah, you better stop me. Go ahead. Come on now.
No, I think, for one, Audrea laid it out very well as far as kind of the communal aspect of building culture and some of those soft skill components that go into it that might not be accounted for when you're trying to build a system. Where I really think my mind was at and continues to be more so, I'd say that's Audrea is an absolute master at being able to pinpoint the needs of individuals and, attend to emotional and mental needs across the board on every level. I'd say where my focus really came in was building institutions. I'm obsessed with the idea. I'm obsessed with the concept. I'm obsessed with the operations. I have been and always will be. And, in order to really protect and safeguard the culture aspect of what goes on internally to the cause, you have to have mechanisms in place that not only build up the institutions, but protect that institution from the institution we're building within, right? It's an institution within itself. And so, as you know, Dr. Rabaka, a lot of those calls were strategy around how do we actually execute, right? How do you have an idea that persists through time without funding? How do you acquire funding without support? Where do you gather support when it's dispersed across different power dynamics in the org chart? How does that actually come to fruition when the people in the room are Black, right? And then it goes down to all of these different levels. And so I'm proud of the fact that it did happen. We got the space, we got the funding. In fact, we're going to get more funding. I know we will. We will continue on that path. We have the leverage in a positive way, right? It's good for the community. We showed up and said, this is good not only for the school as a whole, for people who might not be direct participants in the cause, because they get to say that they are now supporting something that they may have not been supporting the whole time, but that's, whatever. You can take some of those to the chin and move on, knowing that the mechanisms in place will persist through time. And so I keep going back to this idea of legacy. It's less about individual legacy and more about a system that persists outside of our lifetime. And this is kind of the building blocks for that. Students at Boulder, from, even as myself going through, isolation is a norm. The lecture hall example is a great example. That's a norm. Going into, the time as president, every meeting I was in, basically 95% of the time, I was the only Black person in that meeting, or, had any influence over a specific demographic of administration. And that was really eye-opening to me. So I'm excited for the next chapter. We're building some real foundational work, and it's going to persist.
Wow. Thank you so much for that. Next question is, what contributions did you make to the creation of the Center for African and African American Studies, and especially the establishment of the Student Services Program within the center?
Yeah, so I was thinking back on this, and the day I got out of your class, and I was like, Rabaka, can you stay behind? Like, I need to talk. And I spoke to Sean O'Neill beforehand, before I addressed this with you, because I was talking to Sean, and I was like, I want to build something on this campus specific for Black students. There's too much of a consolidation for students of color and resources on the CU Boulder campus. And I said, I think that there needs to be something specific to Black students, and that's going to be important to this conversation about recruitment and retention. And so I got on a call with you, Rebecca. You stayed after, which you did a lot for me, so I appreciate it. And I was like, I have this vision. I don't know what it looks like. I don't know how to build it. I don't know what it means, but I know what I see and what I want. Mm-hmm. And Rebecca was like, well, I'm already working on something. And that's kind of how we, introduced this conversation of the cause. And, I was thinking about my network, and, Ruth and Freya were the first people that came to mind for me, and Isaiah. And I was like, I have these students. I think we should all come together and, think about how we're going to merge this idea that Rabaka already has with something that we could see for students on this campus. And that's how it started. And then after that, we started, Ruth, Korea, Isaiah, and I started to work on a petition. Yes. To put out to the CU Boulder community, which got over 700 signatures in support of the cause. And that was really important because we needed the data. Yeah. The school wanted to see the data, and we needed to prove that, it wasn't just Black students who wanted to see this come to fruition, but it was the CU Boulder community as a whole. There's plenty of allies out there. And so that petition was a huge contribution to the cause, and being able to sit in those meetings with admin and really get the ball rolling on things. That's where the component of the Black student mentorship, academic programs, Black mental health conversation came up. In that petition, we also passed some legislation within student government in support of the cause. And yeah, I mean that was my beginning contribution. And I know that my contribution to the cause will continue to grow. Yeah.
And you also created this incredible fashion line where, you raised money, literally. We're talking about the student emergency, the CAAAS Student Emergency Fund, because again, some of y'all know, obviously, when I was in undergrad, I didn't have books, I didn't have food to eat, and I had to work 2 and 3 jobs to get there. And so because I've had that experience, I don't want to see a student come through here, right, and be humiliated and be demoralized. I know that experience. And over the years, you all know that I've spent money out of my pocket, helping students, whether it was pay rent, get books, fix computers, and the whole nine. So I just want to shout you out as well for, again, helping us fundraise, and the first money, your money, the money you raised, Audrea, that was the first seed money in our student emergency fund. The students raised it. And I just thought, this is African American studies. This is Black people. The students themselves, you yourself, the students raised the money for our emergency fund. That is beautiful. That is what our culture is about. The best of it. That is what our culture is about. Shout out. I just want to shout you out. I don't want you to forget all of your accomplishments and all the things that you have contributed. And I want to make sure to get it on tape. right? I want to make sure that there's a digital record of it so that when we long gone, people will know I'm not making this stuff up about how incredible my students really are. Isaiah Chavous, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Yes. Yeah, no, I think probably my biggest participation in the formation of the cause outside. I know we all worked from kind of start to finish, but I think my strength in it was really bringing together some of the leverage and relationships I had built with upper administration and the Board of Regents to acquire the final form of funding that we ended up pushing through with the graduate school and with Chancellor Stefano and Provost Moore. So shout out them in that regard for leaning on the relationship that was built and trusting the word, because there's a lot of moments where we've been fighting for one thing and there's proof to back it up, and there's a cry out for this need that doesn't get done, and in this case it did. So I did a lot of the intros and coordinated a lot of the initial meetings to really lay the groundwork for what the cause will now become and kind of exist at CU. So that's my part.
Yeah, I mean, this is so good because you all know that, again, they tried to almost, there was a sense in which the cause could have been the research program and the arts program. And without you all stepping up, it would have been like Black Student Services would have been somewhere else. And we wanted a one-stop shop, everything under one roof, integrated, right, in the Center for African and African American Studies. I don't think that a lot of people realize how we interact, because they've never really seen, certainly not in Boulder, Colorado, they haven't seen, a Black faculty member interacting with Black students, and the kind of special, I feel like I have a special, Audrea has seen this in my class, I have a special rapport with all of my students, but as as Audrea pointed out, she would stay after class. She would come to my office hour, right? Audrea, you did 3 or 4 classes with me though. Like, obviously you take that many classes with somebody, you develop a real interesting kind of connect and kinship. And then we realized that, hey, as a faculty member, I'm thinking of creating a space on the Boulder campus. Then the students are also want to create a space. And what if we integrate? So instead of divide and conquer, what if we have unity even within diversity? Did I just drop the mic, Isaiah? I think okay, you know what? We gotta wrap this up. Watch this. Next question. What do you hope, Audrea, you're such a lawyer already, so you've already told us about the future, Afrofuturism, y'all. But anyway, here's the next question. What do you hope for the future of the cause? In brief, what would you like to see? What is your biggest hope?
I mean, for me, I think an intellectual component, a creative component, and a social component that all thrive. Intellectual and in the sense of, and John and I talked about this a little bit too, of, holding these panels and lectures and having, guest speakers come in and speak to students about ways to be successful on a PWI and, various different topics that contribute to their intellectual success. Creatively, music, and all components of Black culture, hip hop, a space where students can come and they can be themselves and they can be Black in their own way, and they can be creative. And then socially, I mean, for me, like I can't wait for the days when, we come to the cause and, we can have a traditional Black meal and listen to music and dance and really enjoy ourselves and live in the presence of each other. And have that sense of community, and that's what I see for the cause. And I know that it's going to happen, and it's going to take some work. But that's what I see for the future of the cause.
You're trying to make me cry that day, that we can all be in the cause and break bread and sing and dance and learn and grow and love each other. But to do it on the CU camp, I've never experienced that. I've been here 17 years. I have never, ever, ever experienced that on the campus. But to be able to do that on the campus at Mackey Auditorium, which is somewhere to be, by the way, this is prime real estate on the campus. I mean, that will be a great day. And it's soon coming, right? I mean, we're working every day behind the scenes. John Robinson Miller IV and I are working every day behind the scenes to sort of bring this to fruition. But even just to hear you talk about it, I mean, that would be so dope, wouldn't it, Andre? That was going
Yes,
to
it
be
would.
so fly. Isaiah, talk to us.
Yeah, first of all, agree with everything that was already said, but I think I'm most excited to see what it produces, right? Like once it actually is functioning to the degree that all of these components are operating in unison, you're going to have students that come through and how that's going to change their experience and relationship with their own education, right? Or their walk through Boulder, or their peer groups, or their mentor groups, or their professional journey afterward is going to be so dramatically affected. And I'm really curious to see what that, like the next group of alumni who actually pass through the CAAAS is going to be crazy. Like it's going to be awesome. We're going to have, that's really the essence and like the source, you know what I mean? So it needs to be the source, and I'm excited to see the source take form with how the students move through life. Like we're moving through life right now, and we're going to see more and more of that with the mindset of the CAAAS. So yeah.
This is so beautiful because, again, at the heart of African American studies is, synthesizing, combining the knowledge that comes off the college campus with the knowledge that we know is being generated every day in our communities, right? And the cause to bring all of that together. One of the things that I've tried to emphasize about the center, again, research program, arts program, student services programs within one center, but literally also the cause as a bridge from the Boulder campus to the Boulder community to the broader Denver metropolitan area that you all grew up in. Can you imagine? You all are transforming the metroplex that you grew up in. And so I want to say that you are powerful. See, too often we think of ourselves as powerless, but if we band together and we don't, Isaiah, we taught them, we don't have to agree on everything all the time. But, and Audrea, we don't have to agree with everything all the time. But there are some things we do agree, then let's touch and agree on those and make them happen. What we are doing with the cause, we are practicing institutional transformation. We are literally, you all have contributed something that is transforming your alma mater. There's not a lot of students who come through here that can say that, and even more, there's not a lot of Black students that come through here who can say that they have done something that has transformed their alma mater. This is a gift. The gift you all have given is a gift that will keep on giving, which leads me to our last question. I know parting is such sweet sorrow, but we got to go. I got a lecture I have to give. Check this out. Here we go. Last question. Do you all have any advice for future Black students coming to the University of Colorado at Boulder? In other words, what do you all wish somebody would have told y'all coming out of high school, getting ready to come to the University of Colorado Boulder?
Yeah, so for me specifically in my experience, I wish I had the advice to hit the ground running. You get to the CU Boulder campus, it's really fun. A lot of students there are there to have fun, and they have the space and the resources to do that. And in a lot of cases, education kind of comes second. And for me as a Black student and a low income Black student and a first generation student,
Jeez.
I got real caught up in this. We're here to have fun, not realizing the importance of my education when I first got there. So I wish I had that advice. Like every semester counts. Especially if your goal, is post-grad to continue your education, know that they count and that first year matters. So that's definitely a piece of advice. Find your community. For me, a lot of that was rugby for me, but it was very, very essential to my success and me staying on the CU Boulder campus. So find your community, use your resources. They're there. I know they're real spread out on campus, and we're hoping the cause can kind of combat that and have one place where you can find all these resources. But look for them. They're there. There's folks on that campus who are willing to invest in you, and it's about finding them. And for me, again, that was Dr. Rabaka, that was Sean O'Neill, that was my coaches. So definitely find your resources. And lastly, rest. Burnout is real. Especially when you're coming there to make change, it's tiring, and it's a lot to juggle school and work and activism and all of the things. So make sure you rest, because you can't put forth your best self if you don't take care of yourself first, and you can't create change for others if you're not in your best shape. And so that's my word of advice to any incoming folks.
So beautiful. Isaiah, last words.
In closing, yeah, I'd say be unwavering in your passion. And if you don't know what your passion is, be unwavering in the pursuit to find it. And, this is an area, especially coming into CU, where Black students need to be strategic. All these things about, having fun and experiencing this new walk of life is very real. And the people who are really going to be the pillars in the ground, if you want to be that imprint on the world, to have your, leave your mark, or be a part of a community that is leaving a mark, be unwavering in your pursuit for your passions, be strategic. Sometimes it's helpful to think like a politician, even if you're not political, right? That's how things get done. And so going with the mindset to do business, it's okay to have fun. It's okay to have that downtime. That's really important. What Audrea touched on, having downtime. Burnout is very real. But go in there hungry. You have a very limited window to actually make change and go and execute.
Oh, God. You all have taught me again. I used to experience this every Tuesday and every Thursday. Everybody knows I consider my students my teachers. I want to say very humbly, thank you for continuing to teach me. Thank you for actually making a contribution to the cause. This has been so incredible. I want y'all to know, I love you little round heads. I am so incredibly proud of both of you all. You know that you continue to have my support. That's the thing about the cause. We are family. We are family. Hey, we are family. And that means like it never ends. It never ends. So even once you graduate, I'm still checking for you, right? Y'all still checking for me. We still got it on lock, right? And people just aren't expecting these kinds of relationships to happen in Boulder, Colorado, and the cause is fixing to institutionalize it, where we know like this, we finna normalize this, like what we have been doing, like y'all said, we finna normalize this, right? And you all know that I can't do it by myself, that we need support, right? On so many different levels. But I wanna close out by saying very sincerely, Asante Sana, thank you. Thank you for stopping by, having this conversation with me. I hope that this is the first of many. And I want to close out by saying, I'm Reiland Rabaka, and you've been watching The Cause Conversations. And please remember, everybody has a special contribution to make to the cause. Thank you.
Lift every voice and sing. Lift every voice.